today a discussion with the wonderful students from four European schools in Brussels. Now we changed a bit the theme. This time we have a male dominance, we had a female dominance the first round. And welcome Raino Kielsen Lars from Belgium and Oscar Adserbale from Denmark. Probably didn't pronounce your name right. And Thomas Winship from Great Britain.
Yep.
Happy to have you and your questions with us. And now we have a partly a new team. My good colleague from GlobeU, Martin Hoisik, welcome.
Thank you.
And Catherine Chabot, you are continuing because Market Auken had the last minute cancellation and couldn't join this part of the discussion. But now I would like to turn the word to our students and for their questions. And Raino, could you start, please?
Yes, thank you. So I've got a question for you, Ms. Chabot. Us young people were, I think, rightly very concerned about the environment, but also what our education is doing about it. Let's say, for example, like the environmental education is quite marginal when we compare it to other subjects in our educational system. Should we not have the right to know more about this? Or what can you as politicians really do to help deepen our education and make it more systemic?
Yeah, when we speak about, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm very proud to be here again. And when we speak about education, we always think about school, etc., etc. I think the first thing must begin at home. And I think as citizens, we have to, I think to educate our children at home. It's not only the job of the state, the school, etc. First of all, it's a first answer to your question. And I think yesterday, just an event, I had a fisherman in my office here in Brussels. And I asked him, do you receive information about fishes, about environment, about marine protected areas? No, this guy, his father was a fisherman, etc. But as a fisherman, he received no information at all about nature, about the global issues, the climate and biodiversity issues. And his job is on the sea. So I think of course, we have to reinforce and to accelerate education at every stage of the lives. Of course, at school, but also in the high schools and in the industries, everywhere. And I think media have a very big job to do on that way.
Right. So.
I don't know if I answered very
well.
well.
I was hoping to get more an answer on really schools, primary to secondary. Because right now it's nothing in proportion. In primary, we learn a bit about reduce, reuse, recycle, and that's very good. But then as the years progress, we become 16, 17, 18.
No more information.
There's nothing more. We learn, super complex mathematical and physics equations, but when it comes to environment, we're still stuck with greenhouse warming and reduce, reuse, recycle. It's out of proportion. Should that not be corrected?
Yeah, but I think the problem, I worked since 10 or 15 years on how to educate on environmental issues. And I think today you probably think things don't move. But look where we come from. And for example, on the topics I'm involved on, all the ocean issues, We progress, not enough, not as so quickly that we should, but we progress. But the education should be everywhere, I think, even in, but I think things are changing because probably the economic sector understand that there's economic opportunities with the transition, with and you should have a look on the advertising on TV, etc. You can see the beginning of a progress in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just to conclude the question then, there's nothing you really have planned to change about the educational system when it comes to this. So you propose that we should more focus on learning everywhere and also at home.
I think one of my main goals here is to push, to highlight the solutions. There are a lot of solutions that are promoted, even by young people, etc. And I know that in school you have competitions for the less impact of a project, etc., etc. And I think we must promote and highlight all the solutions. I really think about, I believe on l'Europe des solutions, the Europe of the solutions. And we have to, because I think we have to create a positive circle, you understand? And we have to share the solutions because the main issues we have to deliver, I think we will need a lot of innovations. It's a very interesting time that we live today. And I think we have to share the solutions. And I think here it's already a big issue for us. It will be a big issue for your generation as well.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So next I have a question for you, Mr. Hoschik, about carbon emissions. So essentially we have a global budget of around 229 gigatons of carbon. And once we reach this, we will have locked in a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase. Now, if we look at last year, then we were emitting around 40 gigatons of carbon globally annually in 2021, right? So this sort of means that essentially in 5 years, our carbon budget will be exhausted, right? And the 1.5 degree increase will have been locked in. And now, obviously, this calls for some drastic emission reductions. And in fact, if we look at it, then in order to reach their sort of fair per capita share of the budget, the EU would need to reduce their emissions by 27%. However, as far as I could see, they're currently only dedicated to a 3.3% reduction. So I suppose where I'm going with this is the chemistry and physics won't change, right? And the numbers aren't lying. So I'm wondering if we'll see a change in the EU's policy sometime in the near future, hopefully, to maybe better align with the reductions that need to be made.
I wish so, but I have to say that even looking at the increased effort that the Commission is going to publish next week, so in today is Wednesday, so yeah, in a week's time the REPowerEU should come out. The leaks are indicating that the renewable target is going to be higher than the Commission originally proposed. In this respect, Ukraine and the Russian aggression, in a way, crazily helped to kind of put the speed up of deployment of renewables on the agenda with much more urgency. But yes, I'm very concerned it's not going to be enough. We have, the latest data are showing we have 50% chance to hit 1.5, not in a distant future, but by 26. And I have to say, with the bit of a scientific background that I have, and having worked with the scientists all my life, they're actually conservative. They actually, and this is one of the challenges we have, is that what we face is a situation where the scientists are warning us in a very strong words for them, but with the let's be very frank, financial interests on the other side, because hey, you make money from oil, the company is making money from the current system. There is lots of vested interest in the current system, and there is a big worry in change. It's kind of hard to really get these things to align.
Okay.
And that's where in the previous discussion when the talk was about the need for public pressure, it's really, really needed. It's something where, yeah, imagine, and we have this discussion about the overshoot day. Imagine that, your family would use all the money that they will earn for a year in the beginning of May. Imagine that the companies that, the people watching us work in would basically have losses amounting to, 3 times the revenue. That our countries would be running a budget deficit that would be 200%. That would be something which would be immediate economical collapse. Yet we are running a planetary deficit as a Europe in this size, and we pretend that everything is fine and we are getting better, when over the last years, when I was running for the European Parliament, from Slovakia, the Slovak Overshoot Day was 1 day before elections. Or 2 days, so 23 or 24 of March was the Overshoot Day in Slovakia. This year, it was the 2nd of May. Everybody is saying how we're getting better, but actually we got worse. And yes, what you see often in this house, what you see even more in the council, when the governments of the union outside of the public spotlight are having even more power than the parliament, is this, as it rightly said, this kind of pretendence that, the politicians can bend the physics. And sadly, we all, not just the future generation, we all are going to pay the price.
So essentially, you seem to think that we won't see a lot of change currently until we sort of globally experience a paradigmatic change as how do we see this, and then the Parliament, the Commission, the EU will follow that.
Well, I hope so, that there will be my kind of still a hope that we can limit it to a survivable temperature increase for a civilization. And that we can sustain a level of biodiversity that was kind of compatible with us surviving as a civilization, and that we will have that we will limit the resource use and kind of end this kind of extractive spiral of never-ending throwaway culture. We are in a way on a breaking point, because we have lots of opportunities in disruptive technologies, and we have really quite a bit of change in thinking, and not just parts of the society, not just what we've seen, the mobilization of young people in the last years and all these things, but also increasingly in the business community, where they realize that, oops, we have a problem, and we will need all the effort. I don't know if we will make it, but we have to do our best.
But
give it a try.
You said that the EU, you would hope that the EU is doing their best to sort of keep it to a manageable level. But I'm wondering what do those policies look like? Because I'm looking at it, and it looks like a 3.3% decrease in the emissions, and that's just it's not enough. Like, we're going to reach 1.5 at this rate in the next 5 years, and a tipping point might be even sooner. So.
I'm not. Slight correction. It's not that we are doing the best. We're by far not doing the best. We're not doing all that's possible. We're doing what we so far managed to achieve politically.
Okay.
And still, there are voices in the governments of the member states that are very honestly, they're not so openly denying the climate science anymore, but in their actions and in the things that they are doing, it's actual factual denying of climate science. That's sadly the reality we have on the ground. That's why I'm saying we need public pressure. It's not to absolve us of responsibility, please push me just like everybody else, but there is a need for the public pressure because the situation is indeed not good, to put it in a very gentle way.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so my question is about the newly adopted Common Agricultural Policy for the EU. So, quote, analysis of the Commission's proposal indicates that it generally inherits the structure and weaknesses of the previous CAP, and unquote. And this was a CAP where only a fourth of the so-called greening measures were considered effective. This is not some fringe opinion, but a view espoused in a statement calling for the EU to reconsider the current CAP by 3,600 environmental scientists. Why is the EU still selling us this fiction of a green and sustainable CAP when the scientific consensus opposes it, especially when the CAP is presented as a main part of the Green Deal? And all of you here have talked about public consciousness, but it seems what you're doing is actively obscuring this legislation and its actual effect through so-called eco schemes, which actually don't have the effect which is purported.
Well, I think that the democracy in many ways is the best way of making decisions what we have, but at the same time it is the worst what we can have. And that comes to the fact that we are doing the policies still quite often, like Catherine said and Martin said, in silos. So environmental politics in environmental politics, climate politics as part of the environmental politics and so on. And then actually the environmental politics, the impact, as you said, system thinking, Catherine, it doesn't happen there. It is how we design our products. It is how we move, what kind of energy infrastructure we have, and how do we produce our food indeed. And there actually you can't do this kind of a small tweaking, because if you are in the wrong direction, it doesn't help you if you walk slightly better or you make a correction of 5 degrees in some direction. You would need to ask what needs to happen. And I agree with that analysis and the analysis of many civil society organizations and others telling that we need to create sustainable food system. That is all these elements at the same time. It needs to be sound so that you get the food. It needs to be safe so that you are not getting ill when you eat it. It needs to be nutritional, so worth eating. It needs to be ethical towards the animals, towards the producers and workers in Europe and abroad. And of course, it would need to be affordable that all of us could have it. And then it would, of course, need to taste good. And what that means is that it should be vegetarian-based or vegetable-based, seasonal vegetables, a lot of wild food, what you can get if you happen to have forests, then a lot of local fish, and then to cut down the use of the red meat up to 1/10, at least 1/5 of what we are doing nowadays globally. Because part of the problem is that you are extending the animal food, the feed production all of the time, and that's very bad for climate and biodiversity and all this. Okay, why don't we then do it? It is because it's hard to imagine things differently. If farmers have lived like this and lobbied like this decades in Europe, and it has been the structure, then there comes people like us telling, no, you got it wrong. You need to start culture broccoli and organic broccoli and whatever vegetables it would be, and phase out your meat production or your cage foie gras production or what. It raises enormous resistance and this kind of a psychological need to protect oneself as a farmer. And then we come, and it was a horrible mental fight in the parliament when we decided over the common agricultural policy, because we knew what needed to happen. And many of us voted at least partially for that. I voted in favor for the package at the last line. Many people voted against because I thought it is better to have Parliament's position, at least something, because without that we would have not had it. It would be only member states that they had even worse position than ours. But I think that you are very right to be angry and say that actually this is not justification to say that, okay, this position is less worse than the other worse. But this we didn't manage to do in democracy. And it's unforgettable, and you shouldn't actually forgive it, because what it does for the future generation, we basically know all this.
From your answer, it seems that you're putting a lot of the burden of the lack of progress onto the farmers as if it's against their interests. And that's not what most people report. They'll tell of when the proposal is first put forth, corporate interests dominate the scientists' interests as well as the farmers' interests. Right now, farmers do not even stand to benefit, especially from this one. We see 80% of the previous cap payments went to solely 20% of farmers.
Yeah, you can see the lobbying. If you ask the small farmers and if you ask the organic farmers, they are actually very much on board with this kind of a change. But they do not have that big of a voice inside the agricultural lobby, where you have, this is true, big firms, but it is the big producers too in different parts of the Europe that work together and work with the Copa-Cogeca, that is the representative organization. And then again, there comes this kind of a, I wouldn't say it is reluctance, but the resistance and unwillingness to change. And it comes from my country as well as the others. And that is, be it what you produce or what you are supported for, or be it whether you would need to end cages and treat animals differently, or so this is what we face. And then I meet sort of individual farmers, but it is like you from schools doesn't come that often to talk with me and talk with us. The sort of ordinary farmers actually doesn't come that often here. It is the lobbying interest organization that are responsible for speaking. But that's not part of the excuse. I never blame someone else that because they lobbied. The final consideration is always on politicians and us.
You make it sound as if the whole negotiation process is an insurmountable system where we can't really make any progress. Does that not speak to some deeper underlying issues with the EU as it exists right now?
You are right. Sometimes if I need to describe EU only with a couple of words, it is too little and too late. But it's better than instead of being just one member state after one member state. So let's try to change it, and now it is the future of the Euro process. So let's try to change the decision structures in the EU too. Well, I'm afraid that we are running out of the time. That happens always when you have fun. I would have liked to continue the discussions with all of you, but this time it was all from this table, from European Parliament, Globe EU, and our wonderful teachers and students from 4 international schools in Brussels. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.